So in the previous video, we have learned about how we can set up our environment and run our first Java program in our system. But we didn't tell you about one thing, which is how a Java code actually runs. So to understand it, you have to know how a JDK is actually built with. So inside JDK, there are more tools like JVM and JRE. JVM stands for Java Virtual Machine and JRE stands for Java Runtime Environment. So when we compile our code using Java-C, a .class extension file get created, and inside that file there are bytecodes, which is machine readable code, and that code got executed by the JRE, and we can see an output in our terminal. So that is how a Java code actually runs. And when we install JDK in our system, JVM and JRE also got installed into it, because you can see in this diagram inside JDK there are JVM and JRE. So if you install JDK, so naturally JVM and JRE will come with this. So let's get back to today's topic, which is data types and variables. So if you look into today's world, you will see more people are increasingly relying on the software engineers because they need softwares and websites to make their work easy. Suppose a businessman had to deal with lots of data, and sometimes it gets very difficult to manage those. But if you use a software, then he can manage those data very easily. And when it comes to website, we also have to do a lot of things with the data. And now when it comes to store that data, at first there is one thing which comes into our mind, which is database. But first of all, you have to store that data in your software or website. Then you will process it. Then you will send that valid data into your database. You will not send all data, because there will be some data which is not necessary, which is kind of like contains unnecessary information. So to validate those information, we have to store that data temporarily in our software or website. So to do that, we use variables. Now if we go to our editor, Visual Studio Code, and now if we print out something inside system.out.println, then it will give us that value. And if we want to addition some value inside the system.out.println, it will also give us the correct value. It is giving us the correct value, but we are not storing these data. And suppose we want to build a system where there will be many data and we have to deal with that data. After we do something with that data, then we will send that data into the database. So if we use data like this way, we'll not be able to do much with this. So if we want to do a lot of things with data, then we will have to use variables. Like if I declare a variable in here and initialize it with the first value, and if we declare another variable with a different name and initialize it with the second value, and now if we addition these values and store it in another variable, then we will also get the same value. But now here we have used the variable, and suppose our project got bigger and we have used this variable num in many of the functions, in many of the classes, and now we want to change the value from 12 to 15. And now if we didn't store that value inside a variable, then we have to change that value manually, and first we have to find that value, and then we have to change that value in everywhere where we use that value. So it is a kind of tedious process. So to do our process very easy, we use variables. And now when the things data types comes into play, there are several types of data, like there are numbers, there are decimal numbers, there are binary numbers, there are floating point numbers, there are images, and lots of other types of data we have to deal with when we want to create a project. So to deal with the different types of data, we need different types of data types. So for storing numbers, we often use int, but there are also other data types like byte, short, long, but those data types use for different cases. And in this table is shown some values, like what is the size of this data types, what is the minimum value of it, and what is the maximum value of it. So as per our requirement, we use different data types. So suppose we need a data which is very big, which is not in the range of integer, but which is in the range of long. So if we use long instead of int, then our problem got solved. And here you can also see byte and short. These two data types actually not used that much, but to remind you that they also exist in the primitive data types of Java, we have included them in this list. So after the long, we have float data type, and float data type is actually used for the floating point number, and by seeing that name float, you can also guess that. But if we declare float data types, we have to extend our value by adding if at the last of the value, like this. So if we use 12.5, it will give us error, because by default Java code take this value as a double. So if you want to use the float variable, then you have to tell Java by typing if at the end of the value. Then your Java code will understand that this variable is float data type. Now a question will obviously comes into your mind. What is the problem if I use double instead of using float? So look, to understand it, look in this table. The float data type's size is 32 bits. On the other hand, a double's data type size is 64 bits. It is double as the float size. So when we are shortage of memory, we will obviously go for float instead of double. So at that kind of scenario, we use float instead of double. So after double, there comes the character, and character size is 16 bits. And to declare character, we write like this way: car, then the variable name, suppose hello, and we type H inside of it, and see, we have used single quote, but if we use a double quote, it will treat this value as a string. A string is a data type which is a set of characters. So a group of characters made a sentence or made a word which is a string, and if we write another character inside of this single quote, then it will give us an error, and the error says that invalid character constant, because a character is only consist of one character. If you want to store a value which consists of a group of characters, if we want to store a word or a sentence inside a variable, then we have to use a string instead of character, because a character can only accept a single character. It cannot store multiple characters, or you can say a group of characters. So at last, we also get another data types which is called Boolean, and Boolean data type is the most simplest of all these data types, because when you declare a Boolean variable, that value can be true or false. There are no 0 or ones in the Java program. For Boolean data type, we can only store the value true or false. But in other languages like C or C++, we can also use 0 or 1. But in Java, we cannot use it. So in this video, I have shown you different types of data types. And I have also told you about why a variables is actually needed. And that's it for today's video. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, bye-bye.